Hello. So today I'm going to be walking you through a tutorial about how to do sound design using a analog or virtual analog synthesizer. This is a plugin from a developer called U-He. You can see the guy's name, Urs Heckman. Maybe it's U-He. I don't know how you actually pronounce the name of this, but I just call it U-He. If you go to u-he.com, just look for it on their website. There's a free download for this Tyrell N6 VST, or I'm using Pro Tools, so it's an AAX, but you can definitely use this as a VST. It's free. It's essentially a clone of a Juno 60 or a Juno 106 type synthesizer. It's got 2 oscillators, a sub, noise, and a couple other things that you can use with it. So I'm going to walk through how to use the basics of a synthesizer if you're kind of a, like a preset user. If you just kind of scroll through presets and you're not quite sure how to use all these knobs. Well, after you watch this, hopefully you could be a little bit more in the know about how to use a synthesizer. So I'm going to skip for right now. I'm just going to skip this first section, the OSC Mod, and I'm going to go here to the oscillators section. So right now there's a bunch of knobs here, and I'm going to walk you through it. So shape 1 is going to be OSC1 here, oscillator 1. So as I play this, what you're hearing is basically a sine wave, even though it looks like a triangle here. And as I go up, it's triangle, sawtooth, and square, and any proportion of these in between. These are the basic waveforms that you'll see in any virtual analog or actual analog synthesizer, because these are things that can be very easily generated using analog components in an analog synth. You can get quite a lot of sound out of just these 4 shapes and all of the various things you've got going on here. So like I said, so right now we have shape 1 going to OSC1. I'm going to bring this down. We're going to bring up OSC2. And it sounds like this one is going between saw and square. I'm not really sure why this little triangle shape is here on shape 2, but it sounds to me like a saw. Now you'll notice, like right here on both of these squares, there's sort of like looks like a little W right there. That's because there's something called pulse width. So the pulse width will change the sound of the square itself, meaning like right now, I believe the square is set to 50% down, 50% up, meaning that you're going to have a perfect up-down square, but you can change it to mostly up, mostly down, and that's just going to change sort of the tone or the timbre of that particular sound. I don't believe on this synthesizer you can just set the pulse width. Some synthesizers actually have that, but that's where I was skipping this section. You have a mod where if you increase this, you get more intense pulse width modulation. Hopefully you can hear me over my playing that. So this is just pulse width modulation, meaning it's basically kind of sliding this little line here for how high or how wide the positive portion of the waveform is, and it's giving you that modulation. Now this one is based on LFO2, so this rate down here is what's modulating that. Let's not worry about that right now. So these are your 2 oscillators. So right now, if I bring both of these up, you can hear I've got a saw wave and a square wave, which is giving you this kind of sound. And if you want just saw, you can bring this down, and now you've just got 2 oscillators with saw, and you can adjust. Here's something that people do a lot of times when they want like a really nice thick string-ish kind of sound, is you can adjust the tune of just shape 2. Just have them ever so slightly out of tune. Now I believe if I hold down, let me see, if I hold down Shift, where is it? Shift. Yeah, if you hold down Shift, you can get smaller increments. So now let's, while you're moving the tune knob, because otherwise it just goes up in 20s. So this is giving you like a little bit of like detune between these two, which gives a kind of chorusing effect. So that's kind of a cool thing to do. I'm going to just keep it at 0.08 there. Just ever so subtle. Okay, now the sub, I'm going to bring that in. And let's just listen to that. That's a square wave. There's no way to change the wave shape on that. It's just a square wave and an octave below the main oscillator. So while you can adjust the tune on oscillator 2, you cannot on oscillator 1. So this sub is based on an octave below oscillator 1. So if you want to thicken up the sound, you can bring in your sub. And then there's noise, which is just white noise, which gets added to your signal. We have ring mod. Ring mod is going to be based on the tune. Oh, you know what? I didn't even notice this. There's fine tune. So ring mod basically uses the tuning of oscillator 2. If you don't have oscillator 2 turned on, you're not going to hear it itself. But basically what it does is it's using that frequency to, I don't know how to describe ring mod. It's kind of similar to like FM synthesis, where that tuning is interacting with the first shape in some kind of way. You can notice how like when it's really, you notice how when it's really close in tune, it's almost like it sounds like electrical circuit zapping, like when on like a transformer that's broken. Zip, zip. It's kind of like that zip, zip. But as you increase it, it starts to sound more like an engine, like. So that's kind of a cool effect you can get. Then we have feedback. Feedback is really just a, it has nothing to do with the tuning in this case. Feedback is basically, it's kind of like overdrive. So basically what this does is it just takes the output of the oscillators and feeds it back into itself. Not enough for you to actually get like, you know, like guitar style feedback, but it just adds more of the signal, kind of thickens up your signal. You can see how thin that one sounds by itself. As you add more, it just kind of thickens it up. Now all of this stuff that's going on in the mixer here is actually going to go before the filter. So you got oscillators, you're mixing them together. You can use any combination of this stuff, the sub, the noise, the ring, the feedback. And then what that's going to do is going to send into this filter here. Right now, we've been listening to it with the filter fully open. So this is a low pass filter at the moment. But you can adjust how steep you want to set the filter to be. So 12 dBs per octave, which is sort of like, I'll show you what it sounds like with just the sawtooth. This is sort of similar to maybe what you might hear on a Korg MS-20. And then 24, it cuts out much more quickly. You notice how dark it got just around 6 here compared to the, let's go back to the 12 and see how it sounds at about 6. So this is obviously twice as much. 24 is kind of more what you might hear in a Moog synthesizer. So like, you know, the subsequent 37 or the little fatty or something like that. And then 36, which very not standard in most synthesizers, but it's just, I guess they gave this option here. Very, very dark, very quick. So I'm just going to keep it on 12 at the moment, because I believe that's actually how the Juno was set up. Also, let's see, low pass, high pass, and band pass. So right now we're just listening to it in low pass mode. So this mix spread, which is basically what this is, we put it in the middle. What we're hearing is, if you set it all the way up here, you've got a high pass filter. You set it all the way down here, you got a low pass filter. Most of the time with analog synths, people use the low pass filter. So a low pass filter just means it's cutting highs and letting the lows pass through. And high pass is the opposite. It's cutting the lows and letting the highs pass through. So low pass. So you're cutting highs. So basically, like what this allows you to do is you get a complex waveform like a saw or a square, and you're just reducing some of those extra frequencies by using the filter. And you know, you can just set it and leave it, and you got what you got here. Or you can also adjust using these two modulation sources here. So you can have ADSR 2 at the moment, which is envelope 2. It's funny that they call this envelope 2 and they call this ADSR 2. Really, ADSR on this particular synthesizer means this section. So we're going to look at that later. And then also mod 2, where you can have it set to a LFO. So you can have the possibility of two modulation sources adjusting the filter. Resonance, you can kind of think of as, if you're familiar with how an EQ works, sort of your cue. So this set to low pass, when you have the resonance down, it just looks like, let's bring up maybe I can bring up an audio suite. So I'm just gonna do this as a example of high cut. So you'll notice how, okay, we're on a 12 dB per octave cutoff, just like we are here on our pole. So this is what it looks like. As you turn up the resonance on your filter, it's akin to moving the Q in your EQ, which is going to give you a whole lot of that frequency that's getting boosted. And as you sweep the frequencies, you're going to hear that resonance moving. So you're getting this kind of effect as you turn up the resonance. And it can get real extreme as you increase. But you can get some cool effects with that, with the resonance. Now, this key follow thing, so what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to set the filter halfway down, and as I bring this up, you're noticing that low note is starting to get more cut. And as I bring it up, the high note gets a little bit, so basically it adds more filter across the lower keys and less filter across the higher keys as you turn it up. Whereas when you bring it all the way down, it's just it's evenly spaced. So you can do that to give you kind of like a more natural sort of approach to how you might want your synth to sound, where the lower notes are not going to have quite as much treble present in them. That's, you know, to your discretion. Oh, okay, this little miscellaneous thing. So this gives you the option to like have white all the way to red noise, I guess, is what this is. Maybe brown noise. I don't know what red noise sounds like. Let's listen to it. Yeah, it sounds kind of like brown noise to me. Brown noise is very bass heavy noise. It's sort of cutting off a lot of the highs. Whereas white noise, sort of a high pass filter on it, compared to like in the middle here would be more like, I guess maybe, to me that sounds more like pink noise, like about right there, like 25%. That sounds like pink noise. These can be kind of cool if you're doing like little short blippy sounds that you want to make maybe sound like a drum hit or something like that. You can kind of sculpt this a little bit to do that kind of stuff. You know, this is like white noise is, or up to pink noise is kind of good for like snare sounds, because, you know, snares have that little rattle on the bottom. Maybe this could be good if you mix it with some sub. I'm not really sculpting it right now, but you could use that for maybe a kick drum or something like that. You know, you can do a lot of stuff with synthesizers. Then we've got ring mod set to oscillator 1, meaning that like, what is the tuning affecting? And then we have your input source, which means so you could either have, so it looks like you could have oscillator 1, oscillator 2, or the sub oscillator, or ring modding, whichever one of these you want. So this is just basically your ring mod source and destination sort of section. I'm just going to leave it like this, where oscillator 2 is the thing that's controlling the ring mod, and oscillator 1 is the one where we're hearing the effect on it. So yeah, so what we're hearing is the tuning of oscillator 2 affecting oscillator 1, and the ring mod mixer here is where we're hearing that effect. If you don't have the tuning adjusted, all you're hearing is the difference in how these two waveforms are lining up and the mixture of the both of them. So you get these kind of random effects because of where the two waveforms are starting when I hit the key. But if you turn this up, you'll get a much more consistent sound, because now you're hearing the tuning difference between the two. But yeah, ring mod gives you some cool effects. Bring up oscillator 1 again. Now we're gonna go into the LFOs here, okay? So we've gone through oscillators, mixer, the filter, this sort of miscellaneous section for noise and ring mod. Now we're gonna go into LFO. So the LFO, like I said, you can modulate different things with each of these two LFOs. And then you can also set where you would like for this to be controlled from. So like, for instance, at the moment, there's this mod wheel on both of these that says source. I'm not using the mod wheel. As you turn up the mod wheel, you sort of increase the depth of this modulation. So let's check out vibrato set to LFO 2. Which is over here in this oscillator mod section. So these are two sort of already preset things. Vibrato is going to control pitch with the oscillator. Yeah, so because it's set to the mod wheel, if I don't have the mod wheel turned up, even if I have vibrato turned up, I'm not going to hear it. So as I bring my mod wheel up, turning it up, it gets more intense. And then let's see if, okay, that's pulse width. Let's go to oscillator 2 for pulse width. Oh, actually, you know, we could do it on both. So, okay, yeah, pulse width doesn't seem to be affected by the mod wheel. It's just automatically. Automatically going. So vibrato is really the only one that's going to be affected by the mod wheel here. The LFO has a particular shape to it. You can have it sine, all these different shapes. So I'll show you what some of them sound like. Triangle and sine are going to sound fairly similar. It's just that sine is going to stay at the extremes for a little bit longer because it's a circle as opposed to just a little mountain point. Kind of think of it like as a swing going back and forth, whereas a triangle is just kind of like whap, 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 more like two tennis balls being whacked across the table, right? Saw is gonna, I got saw up. You can probably hear it more dramatically if we increase the rate. Saw down, dow. They don't sound that different there, but okay. Random hold. Random glide. Okay, so these are all different wave shapes. I kind of tend to just stick with triangle just because it's a very, you know, uniform sound. But, you know, these are kind of cool. Random glide is kind of cool. You can see that just adding pulse width alone just adds some complexity to your sound there. I'm going to see what vibrato sounds like with random glide. Maybe that's LFO 1. Oh yeah, vibrato's using LFO 1, so that's just automatic. This is this kind of thing with your vibrato set real high and the rate slow is good for. You know, kind of those like EDM drops. Kind of cool stuff you could use for effects. Okay, yeah, so vibrato 1 is, vibrato is set to LFO 1. Pulse width, you can control the source of. And then at the moment it's controlled by LFO 2. Let's see what it sounds like with just the mod wheel, which I have turned all the way up at the moment. Okay, so this one won't modulate until you move the wheel. So I actually have to physically modulate that one myself with the mod wheel. I know you can't see the mod wheel moving on screen, but I'm moving it as it makes that sound. Pitch wheel. That one's kind of hard to tell because you're hearing pitch move as well. Random. Let's see what that. Also only moves when I hit a key. Doesn't modulate. If you want it to change on its own, you have to have the LFO controlling that. It's gonna set LFO 2 back to triangle. All right. Now we have this section called the matrix, which is adding more complexity to the stuff that you want to do. So it says here, cross, this is basically XS means like cross mod to oscillator 1. So in addition to ring mod, which is kind of like a cross mod between the two oscillators, you can also have various different controllers doing either oscillator 2 FM synthesis, which is something that Juno did not do, pulse width modulation, or filter FM synthesis. Oscillator FM synthesis and filter sound slightly different, so let's take a listen to that. So we're gonna have this, I'm gonna do this with mod wheel again. Let's bring the pulse width down, and we're just gonna listen to, let's do sawtooth. All right, I'm gonna bring the, So basically, like, when you have the depth set all the way down, I have the mod wheel all the way up just so that as I move the depth up, you're going to hear it. You can hear what it's doing is as I bring the depth up, it's adjusting the pitch of Oscillator 2. So that's what FM synthesis kind of does. It's sort of like modulates, sort of like almost in a way, it's kind of like vibrato, affecting how much vibrato is being added, but using audible frequency rates so that you can get way above an LFO. LFO is called LFO because it's a low frequency oscillator, generally below the rate at which we can hear. So, but FM means that we're using frequencies in the hearing range, that they're like right there. Right there, that just sounds super cool. Just get a really fat sounding sawtooth wave. And as we get up, we get these more odd sounds. Now, because this is affecting pitch, some pitches sound better than others, so I'm gonna bring up the sub. Like already, this just sounds cool as a bass. And it has, you can tell it has that like sort of FM-y sort of. I find that FM synthesis sounds a lot more pronounced when you're in a square wave. You get some cool effects. I'm just using this fine tune to adjust the tuning between these two frequencies. Cool. Set something. So mod wheel. I'm just going to hit this to none, so we're not getting any of that anymore. Okay, so this matrix, so I set it to mod wheel. I have to right click on this, and I'm setting it to shape 1. So basically when I move the mod wheel, it's doing this for me. Let's just listen to the one oscillator. So the bottom portion of my mod wheel is going to be set to whatever I have it set to. So I'm going to put it on the triangle. And then if I add more of this modulation, it's going to go further up the shape. So probably if I have this set to 100% and I have this set all the way down here, then I'm getting the full range of shapes as I move my mod wheel up. So right now mod wheel's down. I'm moving it slowly up. It's about 50% now. 75% gives you the saw. Fully up gives you a square. So that's kind of cool. Then we could also set a secondary thing to go through here. So if I wanted to have velocity, so right now I have the mod wheel turned all the way up, meaning that on its own it's going to be a little bit up here, but it has to go through the velocity in order to also affect the shape. So as I lightly tap, I'm just lightly tapping, and then as I hit harder, it changes with velocity. So that's kind of cool. I could remove the mod wheel. I guess you have to set it to the first one. So if I remove the mod wheel and I set just to velocity. Now, if you have something set over here but nothing set over here, it's not going to work. So you have to have this set first. And then if you want to add additional ones, you can set them here, but it won't do anything if you have it set for the second one. So you can have up to 2 things set for a particular destination in the matrix, and you have 2 targets or destinations. So that's pretty cool. So that's kind of like, in a way, this is making this a lot more modular. It's sort of like if you have a modular synthesizers and you have these little physical outputs and you're plugging cables in, this is kind of like allowing you to do that. Okay, so next, now we have what are called envelopes. So the first envelope is already set to what's called VCA. That's the voltage controlled amplifier. So the amplifier is, let me set this on saw. The amplifier is the actual amount of volume you're hearing out of this. So attack, decay, sustain, and release. So let's hear what it sounds like. No release. As soon as I let off the key, it's just boom. It goes away. As I increase the attack, the note more slowly reaches its maximum. So the maximum is always going to be your sustain. So even if I bring this down, so you kind of think of this as like, so this is sort of like the time and the volume at the same time. And then this, if you want the attack to go to this particular volume, then go down to this volume while you're holding it. You can have this be the time at which it takes to get down there. See, I'm just holding down the key and then that's going up to this volume at that particular time, then using this time to then get back down to this volume. And then whenever I release, that's whatever this is set to. So let's try that with a lower. And that hitting it, releasing. So if I hit this really long, release. It's going to take a really long time for that sound to fade out. So having higher release and higher attack settings is going to give you better pads. I just sort of held that down for a very short period of time. And having short release and short attacks is going to be better for like plucky sorts of sounds. Now, if you want it to like actually even shorter plucky, you just have your sustain all the way down and just have your decay be the time at which it reaches that. Really, really blippy here. You can see that sounds good for arpeggiators possibly. Okay, now envelope 2, that's so we listen to what the amp envelope does. Oh yeah, also, so we got these 3 knobs. I almost didn't get into this. So you can set your velocity to adjust the amount of this. So this is basically like, so that's basically giving it a more natural sort of like piano-ish kind of a thing where as you attack, you get more volume. Key track is kind of similar to what we had on the key follow with regard to the filter. and key track. As you turn it up, the higher keys are going to get more volume with regards to your... And turning it down will be more. So key track is going to work in conjunction with your velocity to give you a little bit more volume when you hit the higher keys at high velocities, and a little bit less volume when you hit the lower keys at high velocity. And then fall rise. Actually, this is not one I'm familiar with. Let's try it out. Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure how to describe fall rise, but it seems like when it's... Seems like when it's set to the middle, it's giving you exactly what this VCA is set to. When it's set all the way down here, it sort of gives you a little bit less. It's like sort of shortening this time span. All right, so that's what these three do. I'm going to keep this key track in the middle, fall rise in the middle, velocity down at nothing for the moment. That seems to be where they're sort of defaulted to. One thing I want to show you actually here. So we're going to loop the envelope. And I'm going to use it using LFO1. So this is set to 16th notes. I'm going to do saw up. Sorry, it's actually, if you wanted to sync it, you could have it be at 16th notes, but right now I'm just using the rate knob. So this is kind of a cool way to give you time-based effects without having to play them. It'll time to your LFO if you want to sync it to 16th notes. You can see now I'm just changing it through the different... This is just a default 120 BPM. So you do have to be kind of precise about how you're playing it when you're in this mode, because it's going to re-trigger every time you could change this to be synced to the tempo. Or just to the gate, which is, gate means whenever you play a note. So that's kind of cool. I'm going to turn off LFO and just put it to gate. Envelope 2. All right, we made it to envelope 2. Well, not the last control, but almost the last control. Envelope 2 is what you want to set it to. So right now, you can see there's a couple of different things that are already set to envelope 2. We have source 2 here in the oscillator section is set to envelope 2, and that would be affecting mod 2. So that's probably your shape of the second oscillator. Let's take a listen to that. Nope. Apparently that's pitch, these two T mod sources. So in order to hear the release, I have to actually have the amp set. So it's moving through the attack to give us that initial rise in pitch, then using the decay as my reduction in pitch time to get to this sustain frequency, and then the release time that we have set is how it's going back to its original pitch. Kind of interesting. All right, I'm just gonna hit this to be none. Okay, now we also have filter mod. We can have filter mod as we turn it up, set to ADSR 2. So generally speaking, if you're modulating a low pass filter and you have it turned all the way up, you're generally not gonna hear it when you turn this up, only if you turn it down, because you're inverting how it's working. So if you wanna hear it when you're gonna have to bring the filter down if you turn the mod wheel up. So now it's using this ADSR envelope to control the filter cutoff. So you can hear how this is, mod set to full there. So you can see how this can be kind of cool, again, for pads. So you're getting not only, your envelope going through the amplifier, but the envelope for your frequency cutoff as well. So that's basically all the sections. Now this particular one, because it's based off after a Juno style synthesizer, has a chorus feature. And as you notice, it went from being in mono to now in stereo. So as I increase the wetness, you're getting more stereo spread. It's got a couple of different basic settings here. Classic. This is your rate knob here. This is your depth. And they'll have kind of different effects. Generally, you want to kind of keep, with chorus, it's kind of nice to keep it in the middle here with your wetness, so you get a little bit of that dry signal coming through, because otherwise sometimes you lose some bass, because chorusing can add phase. So watch. So if you want a little bit of stereo spread, but you want to keep that low end, just kind of keep it around there. This one isn't too bad. It doesn't cut off too much. Anyways, so that's an analog or a virtual analog synthesizer tutorial in depth. I know I didn't really get any complex sounds out of this, but I just wanted you to kind of get an understanding of how this stuff works. For your own, learning, you're going to have to experiment with this and see what you can do. But this gives you an idea of what all these little knobs do, so that you're not just like moving things randomly and not understanding what's happening. So hope you like this. Remember to, if you like this video, like and subscribe to get more content from me. I'll be doing more about sound design, sound editing, mixing, stuff on microphones, recording content, all of that stuff. So like and subscribe. Thanks again. Bye.